there, friend. My name is Megan Pivoto, and this is the SLP Next Door podcast. Today, we are going to be chatting about different ways to take an inventory of a child's prelinguistic skills and how to measure their progress. If you have it, grab your copy of Communicate and Connect and find the page labeled Prelinguistic Skills. If you don't have a copy of Communicate and Connect, today's episode is still going to be beneficial, so just stick with me. If you'd like to follow along, visit the slpnextdoor.com/handbook to grab your copy. Let's talk about the form with sometimes, always, and never. Now, this is a form you want to start with because it gives an inventory of where the child's current skill set is. It's important that whenever you're working your way through this form to do your best to mark all of the answers first, and then go back and gather more information on the skills that might need some assistance. Don't worry, we're going to chat about all of this. Okay, so the first skill that you see is responding to others and their environment and responding to people. Now, on the form, this is split up into two different questionnaires, and that's because sometimes kids are more apt to respond to people or they're more apt to respond to the surroundings in their environment versus the people in their environment. And we want to make sure that we take a note of that. This is what responding to environment looks like. Does the child know whenever others are in the room? Are they aware of other toys? Do they become distracted with new noises? Or do they turn towards familiar sounds? Basically, we want to find out if they have an awareness of what it is that's going on around them. If a child does not appear to understand that there are other things going on in their environment, it could be an indicator that something else is up, like hearing loss, other cognitive deficits, or another diagnosis. So you can ask parents, is your child aware of their surroundings? Do they turn and look at you, even if it's briefly, when you say their name, if they hear you walk into a room, or if they hear a sound that they are familiar with? Be sure to mark how the parent responds and then move on. Turn taking. Again, this one is also divided into two different types of turn taking. Vocal turn taking and engaging in turn taking during like play or exchanges with an object. It's important to remember that this is not you asking a parent if their child shares toys, because that's not always developmentally appropriate, especially with toddlers under the age of 3. So with this skill, we are specifically looking at two different types of turn taking, vocal or verbal exchanges and exchanges with objects. When it comes to turn taking, we want to know, will they engage in vocalizing back and forth with caregivers? Do they make verbal exchanges with others? Do they make some type of action, like rolling a ball, and then wait for a caregiver to respond? Do they do something with a toy and make noise indicating that either they want the toy to do something in response, or they look around and want someone to do something with the toy or the object? Like, did you see what I just did? Or can you help me fix this? This skill pairs with being aware of your environment and knowing that others are around. Not only do they know you're there or that other things are around, but they also want to engage in a reciprocal form with the object or person. That is what we're looking for whenever we ask about turn taking. Okay, next on the list is attends to an activity or attention to task. Now you'll notice if you're looking at the screen that I'm talking more specifically about focused attention. Focused attention is a sustained and active engagement with a stimulus or task, which is technically what we're looking for whenever it comes to asking about attention in our babies and toddlers, because focused attention is where learning occurs. Now, you'll notice that this task is very broad and specific. As we've discussed, attention development occurs over time. When we ask parents if their toddler attends to a task, our expectations are going to vary by age. If the child is under 18 months, we don't really expect that they'll be attending to tasks much longer than, at best, maybe 2 minutes. Attention spans might be longer whenever they're engaged in something that interests them. Remember, this is not us asking, can your child sit and watch a 30-minute TV show or play on an iPad for 30 minutes? That's not the type of attention that we're looking for. For this skill, we must help set a parent's expectations. Like, will they sit and look through an entire book? Even if they don't sit still and look through every single word on every single pages, Will they turn some of the pages? Will they look at some of the pages with interest? Or will they maybe even let you read a few pages before they become distracted? If this question seems to be getting lost, ask a parent how their child engages with their preferred items in the same context as a book. Sometimes the attention span truly is fleeting, and they don't have much of one at all. They run from one task to another unless a TV show is on or the iPad is in front of them. If that's the case, my friend, you just found a really good concept to work on in your therapy sessions. Joint attention. Let's go back to being aware of others in their environment and taking turns. We also want to know if a child engages in joint attention. Joint attention is demonstrated by pointing to or gesturing to an item or saying something about what is being pointed to and looked at. Joint attention promotes social interactions and shared interests. If a child lacks joint attention, it's often one of the first indicators of autism in early childhood. It's important to remember this is not the only indicator, but if a child is lacking in joint attention, it definitely needs to be explored. We're moving on to plays with a variety of toys. Playing with a variety of toys simply means that we want to see babies and toddlers have natural curiosity and explore their environment by way of interactions with a variety of objects, items, or people. Remember, play is not a linear skill, and it is going to look different for every child. Understands words and enjoys learning new words. Now, this skill also plays into the comprehension of language, and it can be a weird question to ask parents. Basically, we just want to find out if a child is able to apply meaning to words that are being said to them, and if their vocabulary is growing appropriately for their age. An example of this, whenever a parent is looking at a book with their child, does the child seem to enjoy hearing the story or the different pictures labeled? Will they look at pictures of family members and familiar people while parents label them or point to them? In the grocery store or whenever they're out running errands, does the child look around curiously as a parent talks to them about what they see? These are the types of things that we're looking for whenever it comes to understanding words. Following simple directions. The first thing I want to tell you about this is that this is not a compliance question. You are not trying to figure out if a kid is compliant or not. We want to know if a child is able to apply meaning to something that is said to them or showed to them and follow through with a specific task. They may not always do it, but they do know what to do, and parents know that they are comprehending what they say. If you're watching the video, there are some examples of this on the screen. And remember, as with everything else, these need to be age appropriate. So directions are going to look different for a 12-month-old versus a 2.5 or 3-year-old. Vocalizing purposefully. Okay, so this one on the checklist is broken up into 2 different questions as well. So we are looking at this as a continuum over time. Purposeful vocalizations mean that babies are engaging in vocal play, social exchanges, and early labeling, like first word approximations, exclamatory sounds, animal sounds, all of those different things coming into play. Are they vocalizing when they play, and are they vocalizing with other people? Moving on into imitation. Imitation is a very important prelinguistic skill. Does the child imitate vocalizations or try to imitate words? And will they imitate simple actions that the parent or caregiver does? Using gestures to communicate. It's important to be somewhat familiar with gestures for this age group, which you can, because in Chapter 2, Methods of Communication, there is a whole section dedicated to gesture development and what we can expect as far as what gestures toddlers should be using by what age. And last but most certainly not least, whenever it comes to this checklist, we have initiates communication. Now, on this handout, I do give some examples of what initiating communication in this age group with toddlers will look like. There's also some examples on the screen if you're watching the video. What you're looking for is, does the child gain the attention of others? Will they initiate it, or does the parent have to initiate it? What are they doing to gain the attention of someone? Something to consider with this is initially how they initiate does not have to be, quote, appropriate. In other words, if they're using behaviors, yelling, or doing something along those lines, You're just looking to get a starting point, so make a note of that. If you need more specific information about how a child is communicating with their caregivers and parents, you can follow up with the Methods of Communication handout in Chapter 2. I recommend completing this form with evaluations or first therapy sessions if this is a child that has been assigned to you after someone else has evaluated them. You're not always looking to pull goals from it, but it will give you some starting points for areas and concepts that might need to be addressed. As you go through these questions and parents answer, do they see this? Do they see this skill sometimes? Is it consistent or always present? They've never seen it before. And if there's anything special about the behavior or about the skill that they have, you can make a note of it right here. As they answer, you'll just place a check mark. Like, do they respond to people? Yes, always. Do they vocalize with the parent or caregiver whenever the parent or caregiver talks to them? Sometimes. Do they engage in turn taking by rolling a ball back and forth? I've never seen that. Okay. And then you just go through the whole form that way. I would recommend completing this form as well at the starting point of therapy, and then periodically, like once a month, once with every progress note, maybe at the reevaluation, however you and the parent deem necessary, to keep track of how a little one is doing in terms of the acquisition of their skills. This also will provide you with a great visual representation of progress in therapy for those moments where you feel like you've done nothing, or parents are asking, when will we see progress? If you would like to get a copy of these amazing handouts, as well as all other information and resources that I've mentioned in this episode, visit the slpnextdoor.com/handbook. There, you'll find access to my handbook, Communicate and Connect. Don't forget, if you found this helpful, so will someone else. Share it with a friend or colleague. Thanks for being here, friend.